Welcome back to another episode of the Apocalypse Podcast. I am one co-host, Kyle, and with me, my brother,
Taylor, as the other co-host.
That is correct. Today, we have a video game discussion. I feel like we haven't done one of these in a bit. I guess we just did Diablo 2 recently. But today, we're talking about a closed beta game. It's in its closed beta state, and it is called The Bazaar. It has absolutely enraptured me and taken control of my life. I'm going to hand it over to Taylor to describe what the game actually is, but it's called The Bazaar, and it's in closed beta right now. And you can pay to get in, and if you pay $30 or whatever it is, you also get a beta key to give somebody else. So you kind of get a 2-for-1. If you look at it that way, it's like $15 a person, but it's been amazing. Taylor, what is the game?
So I'm going to try my best here. So the way I'll describe it is its genres, which is I call it a deck building auto battler. The way I describe it is so the goal of the game is to get to 10 wins, and combat takes place. It's one player versus another, and what happens is every battle is broken up in between battles. You get about a couple of events where you could get some money to buy new items, which is the deck building part. You get gold to buy items, which you use to fight your opponents. You fight some monsters to get new skills, which are passive bonuses, and you just try to build up a board that will kind of work from left to right on timers against another player who's also builds up a board, and you fight each other. And if you get a win, you get a win, but if you lose some health. And once you run out of health, your run is over, and your goal is try to hit 10 wins. For gamer speak, it is the easiest way is if you understand how Slay the Spire works. Is you think of the game is broken up into days, right? So one day is 2 events, a fight, another 2 events, and then a fight against a player, and you just try to build the most powerful board with every item has a different synergy. Which we'll probably go into more details in a bit, but that's just the general idea is, player versus player, but there's some AI stuff in between to help you get the board to fight other people. And I think it's kind of hard to explain it without making it too complicated, but that is the general idea of how the game is structured, and we can break down the mechanics more, but that's just kind of the back of the box.
I'll clarify the structure because I have some thoughts on how to make it more clear. The way the game is set up, it actually helps in game. You proceed like around the hours of a clock, right? If you think about a standard old analog clock, with noon being at the highest, 6 p.m. being at the lowest. How the game works is it's split into 5 events, and each event is it's depicted by a hand on a hand on a clock ticking forward, and there's 5 ticks before it gets back to midnight. So it's like a clock if there was only 5 hours on it. So the first event is, it can be a random thing, like you encounter a merchant to buy items, like Taylor said, or you encounter some kind of special thing depending on what character you are. When you hit I guess event number 3, which is directly below 12 o'clock. At 6 o'clock, when you hit an event, this is the NPC. This is not against a player. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 events, and then when you get back to midnight, that's when you fight another player. Then depending on if you win or lose, you go to the next day and repeat that cycle over and over. 5 events, then you fight a player. 5 events, then you fight a player. And on the 3rd event, it's always fighting an NPC, which is the developers have pre-made events for you to fight. And when you get to this NPC fight, you kind of choose between one of 3 enemies, and they all have different setups. For example, one of them is a retired golfer, and so his setup is all about healing and scaling shields, and then he hits you with a golf club item that does a bunch of damage. And then there's a fire juggler guy who burns you super fast, super hard, but if you can sustain, he kind of becomes easy, and there's a bit of nuance there. But when I first started playing the game, the reason I'm kind of describing this, I'm butchering the description, really. is I was confused almost how the structure of the game worked while playing it. I was like, am I going to fight a person soon? I don't understand when I'm going to fight an NPC. It's like, I didn't really get how it worked, but there is this little circular clock descriptor thing on the left side of the screen, and as you progress through the hours of the day, in this world, apparently there's only 5 hours in a day, but each hour is an event, and at the 6th hour, back at midnight, that's when you fight a ghost of a player. So that's what's really cool about this game, is that it is PvP, quote unquote, but it is asynchronous. So you can take as much time as you need. You're not waiting for another player to be in the exact same spot as you so that you can fight each other. How it works is at each given point in the game essentially like captures what they call ghosts of your build. And the reason this is significant is because obviously the further into the game you progress, the better your items will be, the more upgrades you'll have, the more skills you'll have, etc. So if you're just fighting people that are on the same time frame as you, it could be weird to encounter somebody who is supposed to be at the same kind of power level as you. So that's the genius of this game, is that it is technically PvP. So you have people making the best decisions possible, usually, and making really good builds, but you're not waiting on them and they're not waiting on you. The game captures ghosts of their builds, and when you are at the same spot as them, they pit you up against a random ghost that's in the same, or a random ghost that was at that same time frame as you, if that makes sense. Did I describe that well, you think?
With as many words as possible, we try to cover
Yes.
it all. But the way I always look at it is they just snapshot based on what day number you're in is usually
right. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, a ghost of you. A snapshot is a good word too. A snapshot of where you're at that specific time, so that
I think games at this point are so complicated, but
They
yet
kind of
so
are.
simple that if you could just have the visual element with you, it would be very simple to explain. And that's what I think the Bazaar does really well, is that it's actually very simple in terms of what are you doing in your brain? What are the decisions you're making? Are all these micro, very simple, straightforward, you're usually picking between 1 to 4 options at the most at any given moment. And I think that's something that's really
That's a
clever
good
about
point.
this, is that you're never deciding between, I think, 4, maybe 6, like when you get to some of the shops when they're like,
Yeah, some of the
the junk
vendors.
shop, well, there's 8. But you never have a large number of decisions to make at a time, and that the game is technically going to play your build the most optimal based on its positioning. So there's no physical APM skill that will separate between you and someone else. It is your layout of your design the best. So it's like setting up the most powerful Rube Goldberg machine you can assemble. That's what I think
Yeah.
is fun about
that's
it.
a great way to describe it.
It's like the way it works is every item has a cooldown, or
Usually.
or it is used based on another item being used. But the idea is that speed is truly the ultimate gatekeeper of how powerful a thing is. An effect that may be deals, for example, the boulder, what is that? Deals damage equal to your opponent's health to your opponent. So it kills your opponent in theory, but the timer on it is, 20 seconds?
Yeah, it's 20 seconds. It's huge. Which,
But
in this game, 20 seconds is an extremely long time. Most items have a cooldown between, 4 and 8 seconds. They get used every 4 seconds, 6 seconds, 3 seconds.
So that's an interesting, so the idea being, that thing goes off in 20 seconds or whenever it goes off based on the mathematical layout of your board, not if, you made sure the buff was up at the right time, you let that 5-channeled buff that you've been building up the whole time fall off, so now you lose because your APM was down. So that's what I, as an old fuck, love, is that it is all mental. But also as an old man, that is also where I fail, because there's
a lot of decision making, and some of it can have pretty cascading effects that you don't think about.
The classic, I remember explaining it to you early, and you said it to me, was that it's an easy to learn, hard to master type of video game that doesn't have, but without any of the, like I said, the physical skill required of modern gaming, where if you're 25, you're too old to compete.
Right. What I want to do, though, is sort of reset again and give a more complete picture of how the game looks too. And what I'm going to do that this time is instead of rambling for 5 minutes, I'm just going to describe how my first experience playing the game, because I only started playing this game about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm fairly fresh to it, but because of, my so many years of playing games and playing games similar to this and playing Magic, honestly, Magic has probably helped more than anything else. I caught on to this game pretty quick, and I got good at it pretty quick, if I can toot my own horn. So, how I very first started this game, I remember when the game opens up, right, and you start your first day, you pick your character, and you just hit play. When you first start, you only have one character to choose from. The other two are locked behind a currency that you unlock through playing the game, of course, because this will be a live service free-to-play game, which we'll talk about later. But when you start the game, you have one character, so it's this decision. Again, they leave you with very small amounts of decisions. They're like, no, this is the character you have, you're playing this, go. So you hit play, the screen pops up, and it's very simple. It's sort of, the board is laid out kind of like Magic the Gathering, for all the nerds out there that know that, where you have your row of items go at the very top, and then underneath that is your health bar as a character, and then below that is your character's portrait and your experience bar. So you know when you level up and get new skills and get upgrades and whatever. So immediately the game, just looking at it visually, you get it. There's a big space above your character and your board, and you go, okay, that's where the opponent will go. My stuff is here. It's set up like Hearthstone. It's set up like Magic. It's set up like any kind of heads-up 1v1 game. You have your board space, and they have theirs. And you're on the bottom, they're on the top. When you start the run, the first thing you do is click on this treasure chest that says, open me for an item. You're presented with 4 items. You read each item, and they're all extremely intuitive. I remember when I started, one of the items said it was a 6-second cooldown, it did like 30 damage, and then it had the subtext underneath the damage that said, when you use an adjacent item, that item gains +3 damage. So immediately you start thinking, okay, I pick this, it's kind of low damage with you don't know it at the time because you just started. But it's got a 6-second cooldown, decent damage, and then the things next to it will gain more damage as they get used more. So instantly, literally instantly, my thought was, okay, so I want really fast attacking items next to this thing. Because if the adjacent items get stronger the more they're used, obviously you want them to be used as much as possible to scale up as quickly as possible. So that was the first item I picked. Once you pick the item, it goes onto your board. You can drag and drop and move the item. When you start the game, your board space is small. It's limited. You end up with 10 spaces in your board, and items take anywhere from 1 to 3 spaces. Basically, there's a small, a medium, and a large item, and you have 10 spaces eventually on your board. So, this item that I'm describing was one single slot. So I pull it down into my board, and I see there's spaces on either side of it, and I go, okay, so now I'm looking for other small items that can fit here and attack frequently and scale their damage up, etc. So I just described the opening, 30 seconds of me playing this game, and I instantly understood exactly how it was going to work. It was incredibly intuitive. Just immediately, from opening the chest and being presented with the limited a number of options, right? I only had 4 weapons to choose from, or 4 items, I should say. And then just reading one of them gave me an idea of, so positioning matters, attack speed matters. All of these things suddenly start clicking in your head of like, I think I see how this game is going to work. And then more curveballs get thrown at you. Like, you're introduced to new keywords where, that starts to affect how fast something charges, or if it can crit, or if it has a different damage type, etc. So that is how my first, 2 minutes of the game went, and how immediately quickly I understood the game, and how immediately quickly I got addicted to the game. Because my mind was just spiraling with possibilities and thoughts, and of course, the more items you see, the more those thoughts and possibilities expand, and the game just took over. And I've legitimately been playing it 6 to 8 hours a day since I started.
What the piece that really elevated to me was after picking that first item. A lot of them kind of have the synergy, or you can see that one of them wants it cares about like hasting aquatic items. Like first, I have to care about item types. Now there's also a keyword of haste, and I do like that the all the keywords are self-explanatory. Like there's we'll name them all now because there's literally 6, right? 6 or 8. So
technically there's 10. Yeah, technically there's 10. This is something I fucking love about this game, is that there is not keyword overload. The game is really, really simple, but the way they've crafted the items and stressing the importance of positioning your items on your board, depending on what is adjacent to what, things going left to right, etc., it creates a level of depth that does not require bloat. So this game has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 keywords, which, if you think about Magic, there are hundreds of keywords at this point. If you think about a game I played recently that I stopped playing because of the keyword overload, is another, actually, not, the game is called Across the Obelisk.
I was just going to say, is it Across the Obelisk?
Yes.
I was waiting for it.
Across the Obelisk, just like Slay the Spire, but Across the Obelisk is conflating keyword bloat with complexity. That game, Across the Obelisk, has like 50 keywords that you have to remember, and it's impossible to keep up or keep track of what the fuck is going on. And it made me quit the game really quick because I understood the keywords, but like, how am I supposed to remember 50 of them?
Especially when you start considering strategy like, oh, boost piercing damage. Well, it's like, okay, but now I have to think about every damage type. I know what each damage type is. I just can't remember them quickly. It's just then you have to look at icons and like it just becomes like, I think like
the enemies. Sorry, go ahead.
A big. When I was younger, I believed this too, with the idea of more individual keywords it means it's more complex, which means it's better.
Yeah.
Where in reality, all it did is that now there's 100 keywords, but none of them. Everything becomes so synergistic that like only these two things care about each other, so they only matter to each other. So they might as well not exist in 98% of the time when they don't interact. Because there's so few keywords now, whenever something interacts with something else, there is it's easy to have that tracking in your own brain, and 2, synergies are much more powerful and easier to, like, things just, like, overlap into each other so much more seamlessly. Anyway, this is not anti-Across the Obelisk, because that game is still fun. It's just
it
too many
is fun.
keywords.
Right, yeah. I mean, I played it for 100 hours or whatever, but I had to quit eventually because it was just too much, but... Yeah, what makes this game...
for fun, they've added 10 expansions since we played. We only played with the base game, too. Jesus.
Yeah, no, I'm not interested in going back to that. It would probably make my head explode. What makes this game so great is the mechanics they've created, right? So like we're, I'm building up to the keywords here. Quite the
so
climax
sexy
it'll be.
and complicated,
I know.
too. Oh, my God.
So there's only 10 keywords, really, and what makes the game so complex is the mechanics that are layered along with the keywords. So like we were talking about Across the Obelisk as our example, the mechanics of the game aren't that complicated. You buy a card, it gets in your deck, and you play the card. What they do is just throw a million keywords on each card and think that adds complexity. But like Taylor said, all it does is actually, it kind of like narrows what you're able to do, and it makes the game less complex. It's very annoying. This game, because of the way items work and because of the way the positioning is so integral to the game, that is what adds the depth that makes these keywords expand further. They're greater than the sum of their parts. So the keywords are simple. There are 2 damage type keywords, fire and poison. There are 2 crowd control keywords, I'll call them, which are slow and freeze. There are 2 cooldown manipulating keywords called haste and charge. There's 2 damage amplification keywords, critical and multicast. Then there are 2 defensive keywords called shield and heal. Now, all of these words I said, you've heard a million times, especially if you're any kind of gamer. You'll understand immediately what they do. Fire and poison, right? Fire scales up fast, burns fast, but it depletes quicker. Poison is a slower build, but it's a lot harder to get rid of, and it does it kills you over time.
And it's subtle. It pierces shields, like so.
Right.
There's a lot of the
interaction.
We'll get to it. The way that the keywords interact with each other is also very cute. But I just wanted to continue.
So something too that I think we actually might have kind of glossed over is the way this game works is you're trying to kill your opponent, which we have said. But the way all the items work is, again, like magic, they hit your opponent directly. So the items don't interact with each other, right? Your board states don't really interact. You're not attacking with an item and then their items interact with your items in a certain way. There are item interactions, but that is limited to slow and freeze, which are the crowd control keywords I mentioned before. Slow just makes your items charge up slower, and freeze literally makes them stop working altogether. But freeze obviously has much lower durations, whereas slow can be higher durations, right? Like 3 seconds of slow, so your item charges at half of the speed for 3 seconds. Whereas they'll do something like freeze your item for 1 second, means it completely halts all progress for 1 full second, etc. That's kind of how the timings work, but that's the only interaction you have with your opponent's board is slow and freeze. Otherwise, fire and poison hit your opponent directly. All of your items that do damage hit your opponent directly. So you're trying to just kill your opponent quickly before they kill you. And then you throw in all these other little gameplay elements and keywords that mitigate this, right? So then you start building up shield and heal to try to maybe out-heal your opponent's damage or shield yourself from their damage while you do damage of your own. And there's this whole back and forth trade that starts to happen. Now, this game is very fast-paced. Something we didn't mention is that maybe I'm jumping the gun because I guess we should talk about keywords here since I brought them up. So, something that I actually just realized before we started this podcast is that these keywords are grouped together in pairs, and I didn't notice that until I typed them all out. Because I had already fallen in love with this game because of its simplicity, but its skill ceiling. You can see the depth this game has, but then at the same time you see how simple it is, and it's gotten a lot of my respect for that. So I typed out all these keywords because there's just not that many for a game that's like this. And I realized they're paired up, right? So like I was saying before, there's the 2 damage keywords, there's the 2 crowd control keywords, there's the 2 cooldown manipulation keywords, etc. And that to me is even more brilliant because it's like the keywords are even simpler, right? Now, instead of being 10 keywords, there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, just 5 groupings of keywords, right? There's 5 little subgroups, and each group has just 2 keywords in it.
And
that,
on top of that, they are all words and ideas that are kind of line up with the word. Like, imagine sometimes you say
intuitive,
like improvise. What the fuck
does that mean?
No, you're like, I'm going to slow that item. Okay. Haste that item.
Get it.
Okay. I'm going to do burning damage, poison damage. Okay. I get those. Like, none of the words do anything except all the keywords do exactly what you think they do. The only difference is, like, the subtlety. So, like, poison working 1 damage, it ticks per second versus burning, which is every half second. Like, those nuances are what separate them, but they function the way without being explained to you, which offloads so much of the complexity of learning a game off. It's just like, that's why I think modern military shooters in some ways are the most popular, is that, like, they function the way you think it would. There's,
Nice.
So,
good analogy, yeah.
Whereas, like, fantasy, like, strategy games, and especially in, like, fantasy, where you have to then, you're obfuscating a real-life function into a fantasy version of it, so your brain has to do 2 connections instead of just 1.
Dude, you just blew my mind with what you just said about military shooters
being so popular. Yeah,
that's crazy to think about, that when you introduce sci-fi or fantasy, something, I love those genres, but that's because, I don't mind learning new rules. And that's actually what it's about, is having to learn new made-up rules for a sci-fi or a fantasy universe is what can be overwhelming and a turnoff for people. But modern-day shit, like, you pick up a military shooter game and you spawn in as a dude in 2024 with a assault rifle in your hand, you know how it's going to work. You know how the gun will shoot. That is insane, and that's an amazing.
I mean, like, it's kind of funny how simple that, like, idea is, but, like, that is why, fantasy and stuff appeals to fans of the medium, right? Because you have to like games to want a game that is set beyond what you expect. Like, for the first thing you gamify is your real life, then you go, well, what if we go beyond what I could imagine? That's the people you're speaking to at that point, people who are already there to learn the new thing, right? So there is like this, but then how do you appeal? That's why I think boring stuff appeals to everybody.
Damn. Okay. Well,
and like, think about, all right,
this game.
You know what? Hold on. I know we're talking about the Bazaar, but think about it. Of like, that's why when your niche thing is weirdly popular, if they then try to boring it out, it like is less interesting to the people who learned their world's rules. That's why Game of Thrones ended up being interesting to everybody, because they didn't end up like backing off of their deeply complex world, but it's still grounded in reality. Anyway, that was just a fun tangent. But the Bazaar, as you were saying,
right? Yes, the Bazaar. So yeah, we were talking about how intuitive the keywords are, and just that is the key point that I suppose I'm almost unintentionally, but also intentionally hammering home, is how intuitive this game was, and that's what hooked me. Is that you just understood it, and that's the subtle brilliance of this game that I think people might not realize when they're playing it, or realize when talking about it. Whatever, is just how beautifully the game designers feed you information, let you make your own decisions that just sort of blossom into these really complex in-game relationships with the keywords and the items and whatever. But it's you have to give major credit to the game designers for how they have figured out how to feed the player this information that they just understand immediately. It's really, really, really impressive. And I don't know that I've ever played a game quite like this, you know? Like the keywords doing exactly what you think they do is so integral and important. And even still, you can get the details in the game. If you right-click on an item, it opens up a bigger infographic and it tells you, haste makes your items charge at twice the speed for the haste duration. Or charge directly progresses the cooldown X, Y, or Z amount. So, you know, haste for 3 seconds means for 3 seconds it'll charge at twice the speed, thereby giving you essentially 6 seconds of cooldown after 3 seconds. But charge, if something says charge 2 seconds, it immediately goes from 6-second cooldown, pops up 2 seconds. So now you only have 4 seconds left. So they're similar, but there's nuance there, and they matter, of course, depending on the items later, and the synergies with charging or hasting. And each keyword has synergies with other things. Whenever you slow an item, you can get a damage boost or a critical chance boost, or, you know, whenever you inflict poison, you also inflict fire, and, you know, there's the interactions between these simple keywords then, you know, obviously gets more complex. I'm kind of just ranting and losing my train of thought.
But what makes the game... So how do you get the items is actually what makes each run feel so unique. So, like, to tie it back to how the game structure is, after you get that first... the first event is always, like, for example, the starting character's name is Vanessa. It's like Vanessa Stash. She picks one of her 4 starting items, and all these items are kind of good items that all have synergies with something, or good payoffs for a synergy. So whether it's like, you know, like pufferfish is a payoff for having aquatic or hasted items, jellyfish pays you off for having adjacent aquatics, etc. The specifics of those don't really matter, but just that idea. Then it lets you pick one of 3 events, and this is how each hour sets up. Is like when you have an event, you get one of 3 options. Once again, so you're not overwhelmed by like, well, where do I go? And the events are... I'm surprised the sheer number of unique events that are in this game. Because you go in and you expect, like, I don't know about you, but like the sheer number of items in this game blew me away. I assumed there was maybe 100, but it's like Vanessa's unique items are about 100 alone, let alone all the neutral items. Let alone all the monster items, let alone shop items. Like, it's wild. But, you know, you pick one of 3 events. They can be unique vendors that could be selling, I only sell small items, or I sell small and medium items, and if you sell me a large item, I buy it at a higher value. So there's all these unique vendors that sell specific items. There might be a place that gives you one free random item of a specific type, like a free haste item. So it's an item that either gives haste or is a haste payoff that likes it when other items are hasted. Another event will be something more unique, like fighting a random monster or trying to escort a caravan. And once you pick those events, they'll have another sub-menu appear and you get one of 3 options. So that is the idea, is you do one of those. That's what you do in one day. You get like one decision. You get 1 experience point. You do whatever event you picked, whether it was go to a store, find some gold, etc.
Each hour, again, we said like the day is split up into 6 hours effectively, and there's five events leading up to the 6th hour, which is when you fight the actual person. So that's each cycle of the day is just vendor, or event, fight an NPC, event, fight a person, etc. And you repeat that. Now, if you lose against the player, there's a thing called prestige, which is effectively just like a sub health bar. When you're actually fighting a player to player, you have your own health bar. Your health bar increases. You can increase the health through skills, through items, through events, whatever. So like when you start the game, you only have 250 or 300 health. By the end of the run, sometimes you have, 6,000 health or 9,000 or 15,000 if you get really lucky, that kind of stuff. So your health goes way up over the game, and that's the actual health bar of the person you're trying to kill. But when you lose against that person, you lose what's called prestige. You have 20 prestige. When you run out of prestige, that's when your run ends. So there's a bit of a buffer, and you lose more prestige the further into the run you are. So early on, you can lose like literally every single fight for the first 3 or 4 days and have prestige the whole time. And just like, you can be utterly fucking tanking. Your build is not coming together. You're not getting the right items, etc. And you just lose. Then suddenly you pick up that one item that finally brings everything together. And suddenly your build will skyrocket in power and you can claw your way back to 10 victories, even though you lost the first 5. Or the inverse can happen. Let's say your build is really good, but then you run out of the items that are scaling your build, right? Suddenly your damage isn't good enough anymore to keep up with these people who have 6, 7, 8,000 health. And now they start killing you. So suddenly you had this perfect run up to like 7 wins, and now you hit a brick wall and you just lose twice and now your run is over. So that is also a really fun thing about this game, is you can start really weak and they give you plenty of chances to come back and try to figure out your build and make your build work. And this also kind of leads me into what I wanted to talk about earlier. Taylor was bringing up the choices, the decisions you make. Another extremely subtle but utterly brilliant thing this game does is the more you play it, the more you realize how important each individual decision is. And the reason each decision is so important is because usually it's for 2 reasons. Number one is, as we mentioned before, as you level up, every time you level up, you get a % increase of your health bar, and then you get to choose a reward when you level up. Sometimes it's you get to pick an item, sometimes it's you get to pick a new skill, which skills can really augment your playstyle. Sometimes you get to upgrade an item, etc. So every time you level up, you get a pretty solid reward that feels good. So leveling up is highly incentivized, it's very important. And every single event in the game gives you 1 experience minimum. So you will always level up over time, but then you can augment this experience by fighting NPCs that can give you 3 experience or 5 extra experience. Or you can encounter an event, like Taylor said, where you do something and you get a bonus experience and a couple bonus gold. And so there's ways to augment your level. There's ways to augment your build and your items. And what I'm getting to here is that when you beat an NPC, you get 1 of their items or skills. Why that's so important is you start to learn what the enemies do and what they are. So for instance, I'll give an example. Early game, after your first, you pick your item, you do 2 events, then you fight your first NPC. The first NPC, they're simple, but they have very distinct builds each time. There's like 5 starting NPCs. There's this ghost that uses shields. There's a little pyro fireball guy who does fire stuff. There's a wasp who has this like really slow but heavy hitting weapon and he does critical stuff. Then there's this little banana that has like a healing and a shielding item. What's so important here is that they each, like I said, have a chance to drop one of their given skills or items. So right away, let's say the first item you pick is a really good fire item, and the first enemy you encounter is Pyro, the little fireball. Now suddenly you can either pick Fireball to augment your current fire item further and hope that he drops his own fire item, so then you get 2 fire items, or he drops his passive, which increases, or his skill I should say, which increases your fire item's damage. So you suddenly have this important choice that you don't really realize when you first start playing the game. You know, you might pick a fire item, not know that you want to do a fire build, encounter the first enemies and go, well, there's this little fire guy, but I want to see what this ghost does. And then you go fight the ghost, and then he drops an item that doesn't really work for the item you just picked, but maybe it leads you into a different decision tree where like, oh, he has a super rare skill that I didn't think I would get, and he actually dropped it, because that's something we haven't mentioned. I forgot is rarity. Items level up: bronze, silver, gold, diamond. That's another vector of scaling, of complexity that this game adds. So anyways, my long-winded ranting point is that your decisions matter a lot because the NPCs have a chance to drop very specific things. And you don't realize it when you first start, but the more you play the game, the more you realize how important it is to take chances on the correct enemies. Because things will, like, really crystallize and come together for you if you pick the right enemy, which I didn't do when I first started playing the game. I was always trying to kill the toughest enemy with the most experience. And I didn't really think about, oh wait, this kind of weaker enemy that gives less experience but has a skill that directly benefits my build. Like, I should try to go kill him to get that skill, because if I get that skill, then my build will skyrocket in power. But I never did that. I just picked like the hardest dude to try to get the most, because I felt the best killing the hardest guy. But sometimes that's not what you want to do.
Yeah. And there's sometimes the harder enemy is actually easier for your build to kill because, you know, you counter that stuff. So sometimes it's... But what I actually did want to bring up was what is interesting about the randomness in this game is that because you aren't guaranteed what weapons or items or skills you might see, you're constantly like basically trying to make the best out of what's given to you. And that's kind of that's why like so much of this game feels like Slay the Spire. Like this could in some ways be like a Slay the Spire 2, or you know what I mean? And then like they're taking what I find like, so if you change relics to skills, like the game almost, it has very similar vibes to it, at least the core.
Right.
And
yeah.
It's basically, here are your 3 rewards, which one you want, and being like, well, this one will lead me towards a payoff for burn. I'm going to start now caring about the burn enemies, the burn skills, and try to emphasize those and just hope. But then you don't get that payoff, but you get another item that might be, and then be like, all right, well, I hope, you know, and you cobble together these 2 half builds, and you hope that gets you, and like that, as well as sometimes the game just gives you the exact items you need in the order you need them. And everything works out, and you're just like, well, I have the mandate of heaven. I'm the chosen one. I was supposed to win this game. Yeah. It doesn't require any skill from me. But the fun in the game is kind of like, well, how do I turn what I have into a win? What can I project is likely to happen? And it really rewards planning in a way that you don't think about when you're in the middle of playing it. But knowing how many hours you have left in your day, like when is the player fighting? Am I going to level before or after fighting? Will I have room? Will my board grow to make room for this item? And stuff like that. Remembering to move your merchant's card to your fixer-upper before going to merchants, you know? Accidentally going to a merchant, not realizing you have no gold and you just wasted a full event, and how that one misplay cost you the game. I know I lost a 10-piece because one game I forgot to flip my 2 weapons so they weren't synergized properly, and I lost by like 28 health on day 11. I was like, well,
you would have killed them if you had.
Yeah,
and like that's I've done the same thing. Yeah, like gone into a fight and forgotten to move the thing back to where it was supposed to be, and now suddenly the whole board just fell apart, and I fucked
and there
it up.
Is randomness in it, but I feel like this game is very deterministic in terms of like
There are sometimes you feel fucked in terms of like, well, the game just gave me an opponent that has the boulder go off in 3 seconds, and I didn't have like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's that game, I guess. But you can see where, like, sometimes you'll get hit by a 3% crit, and you're like, wow, this game, I can't believe this is such bullshit. But then you look at the math, and you're like, well, actually, him hitting the crit was irrelevant. I was gonna die anyway. So many of the times I've able to walk myself out of flipping the game off because I can see the math and be like, I was never winning this. I was deterministically going to lose, and it didn't get screwed over by crit,
Yeah. Something I wanted to mention too, well, not mention, I guess is just reiterate, is the way that the developers give you funnel decisions to you. This game is a perfect marriage of RNG and determinism. Like we've been saying, you get this specific enemy that's got a specific thing that you need for your specific build. That is the deterministic factor where you go like, oh yes, okay, I hit this guy. If I kill this guy and he drops this thing, then my build will really work. But then there's the RNG factor of, okay, well, will he actually drop that thing? So, and you do actually fight. You can run into the same enemy multiple times, so you get multiple chances at getting the specific thing that you want. So yeah, the game just feels to me, and that's why I'm finding myself so helplessly addicted to it, it is this perfect marriage of RNG and determinism. You feel like you have control over the game. Your decisions are incredibly important, but the RNG makes every run feel so unique and different and fresh. And you still feel like, even if you get fucked on RNG, you still feel good for like making the right decision to begin with. And like, it's almost hard to describe, but I don't know that I've ever played a game that's quite so perfectly balanced in that way. Like I love ARPGs, action role-playing games like Path of Exile or Diablo or Last Epic, Grim Dawn, Titan Quest. I love those games, but there's way less determinism in those games. Those games are truly the slot machine. Like, you take your character, you kill an enemy, and literally anything could pop out of that motherfucker, and you just gotta hope you get the right one. That's the kind of RNG that can take a toll on you and eventually make you kind of stop if there's not the right amount of determinism in the game as well. And a lot of ARPGs fuck that balance up. Like, for instance, Path of Exile 2, side tangent, I stopped playing it really quickly because they do not have a good level of determinism in the game. And it felt way more RNG than the previous Path of Exile.
Wow.
Yeah, and so like I didn't feel like I could progress. I was just so bored because I had no control over anything. It just felt really bad, so I stopped playing it immediately. Which is sad because I was looking forward to that game for like fucking 6 years. Anyways, yeah, side tangent there. But that's what I mean is like it's, and ironically, Ryan Labaki, friend of mine who played Path of Exile with me for a while, and he ran into the same thing with Path of Exile 2. We both stopped playing really quick because the game just wasn't what we hoped it would be or thought it was. He just posted this morning, he sent me a link to somebody complaining about the lack of determinism in crafting in that game and how it's basically locked behind rich people. Like, the things you need to determine to make a deterministic choice are so expensive in game that only the richest of the rich have access to that mechanic, and that feels really bad. It'd be like if in this game, the Bazaar, for example, you could fight the enemy you wanted, but it was going to cost you 50 gold each time, which people who haven't played the Bazaar don't know. That's a fuckload of gold. Usually you're juggling like 0 and 20 gold most of the game. The most
expensive items are 40 diamond skills, so
48, yeah, and they're actually an enchanted diamond item.
You're right.
64.
Okay, that's fair.
That's the craziest, but that is really expensive, and you don't see those until way later, and you might have the gold for those. So even a 64 gold item is crazy expensive. So yeah, imagine if this game was like, oh, you can fight what you want, but it costs you 50 gold. It's like, luckily I'm filthy rich, I guess I can do it this once, but otherwise never ever can you do that. That's like, that's what I'm talking about, the balance of determinism and RNG, and that's where a game like an ARPG can really fail you, but a game like this feels fucking perfect.
Yeah, I didn't. How do I word this? I think that has been a problem I've had with ARPGs that I didn't realize was there is a lot of just like hopeless randomness. There is like the way I think that ARPGs get away with it is that there are so many hits that are good that it can be okay, and like pulling the slot machine lever is a little bit more intricate and more complicated and more fun that way. But there's so many different things you can hit because there's so many randomizations within there that it can feel like you have to look at everything. And to me, that was exhausting of being like, well, the allure of the genre of like anything could be the next big piece was the exact reason I got burnt out so quickly on these games is like, dude, everything can be the next piece. I got to look at everything. So, I don't remember how this connects, but just that like too much randomness can be a prison. Like even if it's like you have a wealth of choices, that is too much. This one to me, it like it's so funny. But there's in Hearthstone, they found the digital lever of like they have the discover keyword. They introduced it in like 2013 or something, really long time ago. And it's when this card comes into play, you will be allowed to pick of 3 different cards to add to your hand. You know, discover 2-cost cards. You can pick one of 3 randomly generated 2-cost cards to put in your hand. That like keyword has infected every digital card game I've seen. It's very specifically pick one of 3, and that seems to be the magic number of giving you 3 choices of it's the fun of randomness with the reward of having skill and being aware of your board, like giving the player an option. It seems like that is the like whatever that is that mathematical crack.
This game
code has been cracked.
Yeah, because I assume that came out before Invoke from Eternal Card Game.
Yeah, it was before
a little niche card game that we've been playing for years. So okay, yeah, Invoke is the same thing.
In Legends of Runeterra, they have the exact same thing, Invoke, but that also came after Hearthstone's.
And then Magic has their stupid fucking arena version. What's it called? Alchemize or
Alchemy is a format where those cards.
Conjure.
Yeah, Conjure. It's a little different. Conjure is, I think, what you're thinking of. Yes,
probably. But anyways, yeah, this game definitely borrowed from that philosophy of, randomness of 3, but then, giving the player the choice or the option to make the right choice. And that's what's so fun. Let's see. My notes here. We've talked about the gameplay, the mechanics, the keywords. We can talk about character and balance. Sorry, this isn't very organic, but
dude. No, nothing in life is organic except
dead
air. Something that.
Speaking of which, I have been farting constantly and trying not to make it loud.
That's dope. I didn't know that was a secret you just revealed. So I appreciate it. So one thing I did want to actually call out is the enchantments that you can lay on over items.
Yes.
So.
Okay, this adds yet another massive, massive layer of complexity. No, I mean, you brought it up. I just
when I first saw, the big reward as like at level 10 is you get to enchant an item, and what this is giving basically a keyword to an item. And what I didn't realize is like when you first encounter an enchanted item in the wild. You don't realize that like every item can have almost every single enchant, and it works kind of uniquely to almost all these different items. And in a lot of ways, like I assumed every item had one enchant. I didn't realize the enchanting system was like a system that you could apply almost any keyword onto other items, and it makes the actual physical change on the item. Like whenever it's a burning item, I always love the burning building ones. Are so cool. But like the radiant ones got the nice rainbow effect. Like, so, what I loved about the enchantment system, besides that, like one, that is like hitting like the jackpot. That is like when you see an event where it's like enchanted item with burn effects, you're like, oh my god, yes. It doesn't matter if it's good or not. Like that is just so exciting. Almost every enchant feels good. What I love about them is it feels like
when you got that really OP relic and Slay the Spire that just like, am I supposed to be able to do this? I think I just, those are did I just break the game parts that I love so much.
It's so fun. Yeah, the enchantments, like Taylor said, they basically add a keyword to a different item that previously couldn't have it. So let's say, for instance, you're building a really, really shield-heavy build, right? There's an item in the game that does damage based on the number of shield you have, and then there's a different item in the game that's like, that scales shield up really high. However, shield gets depleted from your opponent's damage, so the dance you have to balance here is hope that your shield is so high that not only it scales your shield damaging weapon, but it also can withstand your opponent's damage so that you can actually deal the damage, right? Because, like, an example I'll give. I had Force Field, which is the item, what I'm describing. It says deal damage equal to the amount of shield you have. Well, I'm going up against this opponent that has a really, like, hard-hitting build. So I'm sitting here hoping that I can build up enough shields before my Force Field triggers to do damage based on my shield, and kill them before they do enough damage to deplete my shield. And if they deplete my shield, then my Force Field triggers and does basically no damage because I have no shields. So it's a really tough balance there. Now, suddenly, let's say you encounter an enchantment or an enchanter or whatever, and it says provides the shield keyword. If you put the shield keyword on a shield item, it does something simple. It doubles the amount of shield it has. So now suddenly, I have doubled the effectiveness of this item, which in this game, we haven't really described endgame builds, but they go fucking ballistic. We're talking like, you can get 90,000 shield and items are triggering dozens of times in the time frame of like 1 or 2 seconds. All of your items are going fucking crazy. Your opponent's items are all going crazy, and you're just sitting here with like clenched teeth and white knuckles and like watching your health go up and down and up and down and watching their health do the same thing and hoping that you get their health down quick enough. Like, it's very tense and really fun to watch. Of course, it's bitter when you lose. It's like, fuck, he got the one crit that killed me, damn it. But so now suddenly that dance becomes a lot less dramatic when I've just doubled my shield effectiveness. Now suddenly you're just stomping every enemy you encounter. Or, new example, what me and Taylor just tried to do yesterday and ended up losing to the boulder build, which we vaguely mentioned earlier. There's this item in the game. It's called Fixer Upper. It's a house. Not really important, but the important part is it has a very low cooldown and very, very high shields. So traditionally, it's an item that just sits there and provides you really good defense, but it doesn't give you offense. Well, when we were playing yesterday, we encountered the Fire Enchantment. And what the Fire Enchantment does on this specific item is it says deal burn damage equal to 10% of the shield. So, this item that was just historically sitting there and giving us, 1,000 shield every 3 seconds, now is giving us 1,000 shield and 100 burn damage. So we just turned this insanely defensive item into our win condition. Now it's suddenly doing damage and providing us crazy defense. So that's what the enchantment system is so brilliant at doing, is it absolutely flips the game on its head. It can either, if you get lucky, like I said, get the double shield enchantment on a high shield item, you can just, really push your build further into the realm of ridiculousness. Or let's say you have this build, it's really defensive, but you're lacking offensive capability. You can't quite finish people. Oh, you just ran into the poison enchantment, and now you're dealing poison damage based on your shield. And suddenly you have this win condition built into your defensive build. So you can, the layers that this game provides you with the enchantment system is just, it's really, really staggering and amazing. And it just lets you turn builds that normally wouldn't work into a build that is incredibly powerful. It's unbelievably impressive, the enchantment system. Just that simple. Adding a different keyword to an item that doesn't normally have it is like, it's mind-blowing how many doors it opens.
It's so fun because it's adding keywords, the things that can't, like, adding fire to a puffer fish is like, it's so cool because it really breaks the, like, There are some items that like really break because they aren't designed to have that keyword, and when they do, it's kind of nuts. Like I know it's not a very powerful combo, but there's an item called the musket. It's an item that has a depletable resource, and once it's out of that resource, it can't use it for the rest of that combat. But if fire damage is applied, it automatically replenishes it. So if it has fire damage on itself, it has infinite ammo. So its downside just goes away, and like the item on its own is not that powerful, but like. It not only, like, that's what makes that enchantment system more interesting, because it turns items not just into, is it more effective of an item, but it can sometimes clear up space on your board of, like, well, I was keeping this extra 2-slot item around to reload this gun, but now I don't have to reload it anymore. It reloads itself. So now I can bring in this awesome, different offensive item that lets me do, so that's the stuff that is, the game's in constant state of motion, and you're so encouraged to make weird changes, and I think I always feel mixed about games with finite board space. Like, Eternal having 12 units or whatever is like the max number. I usually don't like it because, like, I love to have, I'm a Timmy at heart. I want to see my guy grow to be a 9,999 damage and overkill by that much. But this game, it feels like there's that exact sweet spot of, like, I feel like I have a lot of room, but I always just want one more space that makes me have to, it forces me sometimes to make a decision of, like, well, I have 2 half builds here. I gotta commit. And, like, it forces me to make a decision that ends up making me better win or lose, but it will make me make a decision that I can then, if I'm a good player, learn from. Whereas before, I could just half step it the whole way and just be like, well, I don't know, I just never got what I needed, you know? But by forcing me to, like, kind of commit to one major build, I don't know if that makes sense, but...
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it in movies, that limitations breed creativity. It's the same thing. Like, yeah, of course, you just want to be able to stack item on item on item, but it is the limited board space that forces you to create a build and not just get every good item and pile it together. It's like you need that limitation to really make sure that you know what you're doing. It's satisfying, too. If you just had a smorgasbord of shit and it all kind of worked, it wouldn't be satisfying. It's like the amount of time that I deliberate on positioning of items and, like, well, is this one marginally better than this one? And doing all this and then getting to the fight and seeing it pay off and seeing the synergy of everything just explode. Like, that's so rewarding, and that wouldn't happen if I didn't have to make the choice. So that's why it's really important.
Yeah, for sure. I thought I had another follow-up after that, but it escapes me at this moment, so we might want to start talking.
Nice. Well, another thing I wanted to talk about too about the keyword thing is there are tons of skills in the game. We call them skills, but they're basically passive skills. They passively augment your character. You know, one of them will be like, whenever you use a weapon, your shield items gain shield for the fight. Or whenever you use a specific size of item, your items gain a
some of the major ones,
strike chance.
Circle it back, are like your leftmost weapon does 30 damage. So that can really influence your position.
Yes.
Some of the skills are why positioning matters.
True. And the items themselves, of course, too. It's some items are like, when an item to the left of this is used, do X, Y, or Z. Or this powers up the item to the right. And, you know, you compare that with an item that deals, you know, buffs up something to the left, and then you sandwich this good item between the left item and the right item, etc. So, yeah, positioning is really important. But then there's things like, sometimes, of course, RNG can screw you a little bit. Like, you'll get a skill that just doesn't do anything for you. It's like, whenever you burn, you gain, you know, your items gain additional damage. It's like, well, shit, I'm playing a weapon build that has no fire in it whatsoever. This skill is literally worthless to me. Fuck, oh well, we have it, we move on. Then you run into the fire enchant, and you go, oh my god, I just turned on an incredibly powerful passive skill that literally did nothing before.
That is such...
So even if fire damage... Oh my god,
it's like one of the highest high points you can get is just like turning on this useless thing from 20 minutes ago. Oh god.
Yeah, it's great. And like, even if the fire damage itself on the item that you just enchanted is completely worthless and doesn't contribute to your win condition, it now activated a different part of your kit that does contribute to your win condition. So like, my weapon is, if you have a weapon build that's doing a ton of damage already and critting and stuff, it's like doing 2 extra fire damage is not helping you win the game. But it's the fire damage activating the different passive skill that is impactful now suddenly helps you win more. And so that's, again, just harping on why the enchantment system is so important and powerful and really fun and making the right decision. And items do have different types of enchantments too. Like just because you give it fire doesn't mean it will behave the same way as a different item that has fire. Some of them do flat fire damage. Some of them do a percentage of fire damage based on a different factor. And so, you know what fire does, you know how it works, but how it scales and how it works on each individual item can change. And that's another layer.
I will say, to not just glaze this game the whole time, there is a little bit of there's no way to preview that. Like when you get to the things like enchant a weapon, and they have a way to be like, okay, but what will it do after I enchant it? I can't preview it. And there's a website.
Yeah, there is the random enchant,
and like,
yes,
but like
too.
even when you go to the altar, like enchant a weapon with burning effects, but like I don't know what my katana will look like versus my fixer upper until I've enchanted it. There's no like preview for it. And if there was a way to preview what it would be, that would, I think, just be objectively.
It is, yeah, but it is, like, I guess I made it sound more random than it is. If you enchant something that does, like, if you put the fire enchant on the katana, it will always do 10% of its damage as fire. If you put the fire enchant on fixer upper, it will always do 10% of its shield value as fire. So they're, you know what they do, and you learn that over time.
Okay, but my point being, though, why punish then people who don't know that? That's
right,
only going to help people who are good at the game beat up the people who aren't. So, like that, I agree with you that it isn't a big deal, but I don't see it is not good to not have it.
I'm sure they
will
have that, honestly, because
they constantly are updating this game in a way that's been like weirdly quick to see major changes, like the fact that they added a damage recap. You didn't even know that was a thing until halfway through.
No.
The way that they have altars instead of, it used to be like upgrade your leftmost item, and sometimes you click it and not realize, oh fuck, I forgot to move my stuff. Now they change it to they have the altar now where you can drag things into an upgrade slot. Like, so they're messing with the UI in a way that's like, okay, that's pretty cool. They're pretty quick to balance fix. Even when you considered a lot of this was around Christmas time, it was a little touch and go.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah,
okay.
I started.
But
apparently...
I did want to say. I remember what I wanted to say earlier of the way they let the infinity kind of go crazy is you can have infinite number of skills, which I do appreciate. That the items are limited, but the skills are infinite.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, you have 10 slots for your items, but you could get 30 skills if you're lucky by the end of the game, and that can really make your build totally explode. Fuck, I had something to say too, and now I kind of forgot it. Yeah, me too, man.
So do you want to talk about...
So
I was like, was there something else? Or do you want to talk about the different characters?
Yeah, the characters we could move on to. One thing, I just saw this word on my notes that we didn't talk about too. This is another thing that I like about this game. Similar to Marvel Snap, for those who have played Marvel Snap, where it's limited, it's a time-limited game. Like, the game cannot last longer than 5 minutes or whatever. This game has a similar system. It's called the Sandstorm. Because as we've described, builds can go crazy and theoretically hit infinite values that can't be stopped. So there is this mechanic in the game called the Sandstorm, and I believe after 30 seconds of in-game fighting, if neither of you are able to kill each other, a sandstorm starts and deals constant damage to both players in equal amounts. And that damage also scales over time, till eventually you could be taking up to thousands of damage per, like, 10th of a second. That's how high this thing scales. It will scale infinitely to make sure somebody dies. And so there is a limiter in this game too, where you can't just go infinite and be stuck in a game forever because neither of you can kill each other. There is a factor called the Sandstorm.
That's why you can win with a defense-only build, is that, in theory, you can outlive the Sandstorm. So they turned defense into a win condition by the Sandstorm effect too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. A lot of the times early game, it's hard to get enough damage sometimes, like you just aren't given the right items or choices or whatever. But you can build what's called, people call it not affectionately, colloquially.
Nailed it.
It's colloquially called a fatigue build, which means you are so defensive, you maybe stack so many shields and healing effects that yes, you intentionally bring your opponent into the sandstorm, and you let the sandstorm kill your opponent rather than you. So, that's what we were talking about before, actually, even without the enchant system, there is a way to have just a pure defense fatigue build, as they call it. Like I said, win the game, but it gets a lot harder to do that later in the game because builds kind of scale really hard, and they have really good synergies. They do really good damage. It's very, very hard to have a fatigue build.
Yeah, I'd say that
that's usually
what you can do is you can transition early game fatigue builds into something, but I don't think you tend to
right.
Just because poison just trumps almost all defensive builds, and by nature of how fast a sandstorm ticks and how slow items are to activate, eventually, even if you've turtled up, it doesn't work, especially with weapons scaling faster in proportion, and yeah, it's tough with the weapon speed.
Yeah, I recently tried a fixer-upper pure fatigue build because I couldn't find a fucking spiky shield. Just couldn't do it. I went to about 50 fucking vendors trying to find this specific item, and I just could never find it. And it was like, okay, I guess I'm just a fixer-upper fatigue build on day 10, which is crazy hard to do.
Bad,
and it worked a little bit. Dude, it was a fucking 4,000 shield.
Oh my god.
Heavy. It was heavy. That was the enchant I got, unluckily, was the way it slows my opponents. So I was like, okay, between my shields and my slowing, maybe I can still kill people with the sandstorm this late in the game, but it just didn't work, and I ended up losing that run because I just couldn't get the item I needed. So, of course, that happens too. You get screwed on the items, you get screwed on the enchantment, and your build just falls apart, and you hard committed to this one style of play, hoping you'd find the payoff, but you never find the payoff, and you kind of just fizzle, and it's like, that was the choice I made. And in fact, I saw a spiky shield really early into the run, but at the time, I didn't know I was going to end up with the fixer-upper build, because I got the fixer-upper a little bit later. So, I could have bought the spike shield early, just anticipating maybe I will get these shield items that make it work later, but I skipped it, and then it bit me in the ass, because I couldn't get a spiky shield later.
The game does reward speculation, because remember, just recently we had a build,
just yesterday,
we speculated on doing the fixer-upper build, and the entire run in the back in our backpack, building up this build, and when we finally transitioned over to it, our win rate skyrocketed. Granted, it didn't last too much longer, but
yeah, because we hit the stupid fucking boulder.
Something that I do think is interesting that I've come to with time appreciate. It's things like the boulder, I like to call gimmick weapons, where they're a little hokey,
yes.
But late game,
they're annoying.
Though they're
boulder.
designed to be end game runners, where they're punishing builds that never you never committed, you never figured out your shit. Well, here's punishment. All right, you're just it's the hard counter to you hope you match up against the builds that just didn't quite make it. That's the way that kind of the rock paper scissors transitions into, I guess. It becomes OP builds versus the gimmick. It feels like at some point you just can't survive on pure defenses, but I was pretty tilted losing yesterday.
I know, yeah. I was almost hoping you were going to stay a little tilted so we could have a bit of a more contrast between our opinions, because obviously I'm deeply in love with this game.
I find it so funny
Taylor's
because
annoyed with
we're
it,
on opposite ends, because you were not vibing with this early on, or at least expressing it in a way that I was under the impression you...
Yes,
you
right.
were feeling the game. I feel like the first game or two, I think they do probably play you against bots straight all the way through to get you comfortable.
It is 100%. I am 100%.
But then you start playing against real people, and the game has a high skill ceiling. I think the skill floor is pretty. Is good. You feel like you know what you're doing, but that's what makes the early stages really rough. Is man, you start to
see people who get it, and you're like, wow, I thought I understood this game, but clearly I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, like, how does that build exist in the same day as mine? They just steamrolled me like I was
you
a
see
bug.
8 items.
And it's like, how did they get that to happen?
You see 4 items you've never seen before, firing at 600,000 times before you blink, and then you're dead. And you're like, what game did they install? Because I'd like to play that one. But
Or you do what I do and is like, wow, they got so fucking lucky. But then the more you play, the more you realize, like, oh no, they probably chose really specific encounters to reduce the RNG factor and increase the deterministic outcome of them getting a specific thing that they want. And that's the stuff that you kind of get enlightened to later.
I think what like doing that run with you and us building up the fixer upper early was like noticing how many times I saw balcony before we bought balcony. Of like, how many times in a game you'd be like, I never got offered that spike shield. It was like, well, how many times did you pass over it earlier when you weren't actively looking for it? And it just makes you appreciate like, sometimes you have to, the game rewards you for speculating, of being like, I want to build into something, because a lot of things work well off of wanting that build.
So I'm going to use yesterday's run. I'm going to regale the listeners with a little bit of a tale from yesterday, because it's a good example of kind of how this game can work. We have neglected to mention that there is a stash space. You have a stash that has 10 slots in it, right? The same space as your board. So you can hold technically up to 20 spaces worth of items between your actual board and your stash. And what ended up happening was yesterday, Taylor and I were doing a run together, kind of, he was streaming it and we were just playing it together. And we were getting this build going that kind of sucked, and we couldn't quite find the items to make it click. And by the time we did find the good item, Crook specifically, it was like kind of too late, and we had already lost too many runs, so we were basically out of prestige. But during this time, as we've mentioned, this item, Fixer Upper, again, it's a big item that provides probably the most shield of any item in the game, but you really need to commit to it. That's the whole thing. Without getting into the nuance of it, it's the most rewarding item in the game, basically, but you have to really commit to it. So as we're building up this board state of a bunch of medium items that aren't really working together, we're losing a lot, we find Fixer Upper and an item that pairs with it incredibly well. But these items by themselves aren't good enough to win, and we couldn't mix them with our current build because they just didn't synergize in a way that we needed them to. So we essentially had to occupy like 7 slots in our stash space, holding on to these items that all make Fixer Upper good, but we didn't have the payoff to make Fixer Upper actually win the game. So we were stuck basically making a build in our stash space and trying to upgrade a build that we were actually trying to use so that we could progress in the game.
Out how it's so funny that the name of the item is the Fixer Upper. What it does is Fixer Uppery, and we were still patching it like the whole run like a Fixer Upper. Like,
that's
it's
true.
Just a very funny,
very meta.
Perfect name for that item.
Yeah, like a struggling. Yeah,
we're trying to assemble that
that's
nice run from the ground up.
Yeah. So, what ended up happening is we finally built Exodia. We got the pieces we needed. We found the motherfucking fire enchant to put on our Fixer Upper. So now our Fixer Upper was shielding us for 1200 and burning the opponent for 120. We got it. So we sold our shitty weapon build. We pulled in our Fixer Upper build that we'd been building up on our stash. It was firing online. It was going super hard. It finally worked. First enemy we encounter is the gimmicky boulder build that did 18,000 damage to our health bar in like 4 seconds, insta-killed us. And because we had lost so many games early in the run, we ran out of prestige and we lost.
And it was so devastating.
We spent this whole it was really devastating. We spent this whole fucking time trying to get this thing to work. We finally do, and we run into one of the most like niche gimmicky builds that's insanely hard to beat. We ran into them they just like insta-killed us. It was really, really tragic. I hate Boulder personally. It's
there are a couple things that this is like
I have this same feeling with like Magic the Gathering design of like there's just like some play styles you put in here, then they have to be like, I don't know, we don't know how to balance this. Like, you motherfuckers like put in an actively unpleasant play pattern thing and are like, what do we do about it? I don't know. Why'd you put in items that destroy items? What are you doing? Why are you putting in an item that can kill your opponent in 1 second? What are we doing? Anyway.
Yeah, so like the gimmick for Boulder, right, is that as we described, it's a 20-second cooldown, which is astronomically large. It has ammo. It's only one-time use item. But what it does is it literally just says deals damage to your opponent equal to their health, their max health. So if you have 1,000 health, it deals 1,000 damage. If you have 10,000 health, it deals 10,000 damage. Then what you do with this build is you put critical strike chance on it. And what critical strike does in this game is it's simple. If you hit the crit, it deals double damage. So you get a crit boulder that deals damage equal to your opponent, and then that is doubled because they're critting. So you have 9,000 health and you're taking 18,000 damage. That's
and
what our
the
opponent
reason
had
why
going,
it's
was a full crit
It makes me
boulder.
so mad because like even if you committed to a shield build, getting a shield equal to your 100% of your health bar is like you're so far ahead you've won. Like to get that much shielding that quickly is already patently absurd. But that's just to survive the one item. Then they also have the rest of their board that does stuff too. It's just like, Boulder.
Yeah. So yeah, like Boulder sounds overpowered, but it's a long cooldown. If they don't have critical strike chance, then it is just a flat value equal to your health. And so how you can survive that is with shield, right? Let's say you have these items that give you shield, and by the time the 20-second boulder happens, you have built up like 5,000 shield. Now the boulder does 9,000 damage because that's your health bar, but you have 5,000 shield. So 5,000 shield gets absorbed, then 4,000 of your health gets absorbed. And you have now survived boulder. And that's, in theory, how you're supposed to survive boulder. But this guy was able to build up a board where his boulder was critting, so it was doing double your health of damage. And it had like literally a 5 or 6 second cooldown. He had so many different items and synergies working towards speeding up the boulder that it happens so quickly that we couldn't have possibly like built the defenses up enough to survive it. So that's why it felt really shitty, and a gimmicky build like that, it feels quite literally unbeatable. And I have to think like, I know there's a lot of determinism in this game, but that guy had to have gotten lucky with the way everything worked out for that build. Like, he had to have gotten Boulder early so that he knew to commit to it. He had to have then gotten, like, the specific items that give haste in a way that's really relevant, had to have gotten the skills that reduce it further. Like, all of these things just suddenly started working in his favor, and he got this god tier build that smashed us. Now, of course, you are very often on the receiving end of that, where you go, oh man, I really wish this happens. The next event, that thing happens. You're like, oh my god. Suddenly you scale up and have a god tier build really, really quickly. So of course, RNG works in your favor too, and that feels great. But it's when it's just like, we could have fought any fucking ghost, and the game had to RNG pick this Boulder guy. We also could have, like, tried to get this build going sooner in a different way and maybe scale it better so we actually could have survived the boulder, although very unlikely. So, you know, I don't know what I'm going on about really. It's just sort of a tangent about yesterday, and that, you know, the RNG can really fuck you and then really favor your opponent and create this terrible matchup that just feels really, really bad, which is what happened yesterday.
That is the downside of the asynchronous multiplayer of just sometimes you'll go against, like, sometimes you'll get that fight where the most OP build against you when your build is like a complete dumpster fire and you're like, I'm going into this knowing I'm going to lose. And you get placed against an OP opponent and be like, yeah, sweet. Nice job using your boulder. Like, what a waste of that overpowered build. So it goes both ways. But that is something that I don't know how you could ever really solve except picking your own opponent, which obviously that's not fair.
Nah, you would never. Yeah, sometimes you just get paired up against the person that hard
and
counters
sometimes,
your build. Like, I'm really heavy damage, really heavy shield. If I encounter a poison build, I just die because I have no healing. first person you encounter is poison, and you're like, okay,
Yeah,
yep,
and like,
I just died.
and sometimes you encounter them where it literally doesn't matter, or you encounter them and it's the reason you don't get the 10 wins. So like it also happened that we just got off our previous one, which also ended in kind of the like anticlimactic. We just set up the car, and we get down our street and the car breaks down. It's like, God, I just want to see if I can make it to school, man. And I would say, like, at the end, I do stand by, like, I wish there was something I could do with this build even after I lose. I wish there was just, like, I don't know, I could still play it out with no rewards or something. Like, because I just like playing the Bazaar to 10 wins. Like, it's just such a fun experience that I wish there could be, like, in the way that, like, Grim Dawn does hardcore. No, maybe it's not Grim Dawn. Path of Exile. The one when they die in hardcore, they just move to the softcore ladder. It's like, what if you go from, you die in ranked, you go from you no longer get chests, but you can continue the run in endless mode. Or, like, sometimes they do that type of thing of, like, there's so much of this game isn't against players that, like, I feel like it's okay. Like, you could still let me go, just don't let me collect any rewards. That's what I wish free play was.
Yeah. Very often I have been like, even just for optimization, like, I wish I could redo this exact fight, but let me switch up a couple items to see which would have worked better. Or like you're saying, like, fuck, my build finally got going. We encountered, we got killed by our hard counter. Like, just let me do an endless mode where I don't get rewards, but I can just kind of refresh and cycle through enemies and keep fighting different enemies to see how my build would have worked if I didn't run into this one specific build. Like, even just a reroll button where you don't progress anymore whatsoever.
Yeah, just give me a new enemy.
We could have just re-rolled. Yeah, like, okay, I get it. I lost the game. Fine. But let me just see if this build would have worked against something else. That would be cool.
I think what it really says to me is the thing of, like, I just like this game so much that I want the perfect mode so that I am constantly, you know what I mean? Like, that's what it's saying to me. Because a lot of times I just would just say kind of like, I wish it was different, and then not have an idea. I've thought about it, like, what would I want out of this? And it is a very frustrating game when you're not very good at it. That's one thing.
I wanted to go back to when you brought up earlier how when I first started this game, I was getting very frustrated. What I realized after unlocking the next two characters. So like I said before, when you start the game, all you have is Vanessa, and then the first character costs gems, and you only get gems from doing ranked, and you can only do one ranked run per day. Or you get one free one, otherwise it costs 100 coins of their live service currency, which is maybe something we don't have to get into, but I hate that.
The only way to get that way is to get a 10 win, which is so hard to do. Yeah,
so they have a free play mode, but you get literally no rewards unless you get 10 victories. And if you get the 10 victory success, you get one ticket to play ranked. And getting 10 wins can take like 2.5 hours if you're really like trying to make your build work. And so, you can spend all day getting to a couple 8 or 9 victory runs, and you realize, like, but whatever, you can say, like, well, I had fun actually playing the game. That's value that is lost in today's day and age with these live service models and constantly having to be rewarded. It's like, what happened to just playing a game because it's fun? This game is fun.
So what I just to add to your point, I think the problem is by putting in any type of incentivization system now makes it that if you're not getting rewards, it's bad. Like, so the fact there is rewards in ranked mode means that there is rewards to be earned by playing, but only in the correct mode, and you have to earn your way there. And there's no way to, like, even if it was like, I earned 80% of a ticket for 8 win. Like, what is it? Like, why not a secondary currency that you like, why? Yeah. Anyway, that's why I think it's egregious.
So, however, in their defense, they have gone on record multiple times saying that their free play track is, in their words, bad to terrible. They have said that specifically, the developers. So they know it's really awful, and they're going to fix it.
That's why I'm not like, I never held it.
The easiest way to do it is, like, each win should just be 10% of a ranked ticket. So if you get 6 wins, you have 60% of a ranked ticket. It should just be like a bucket that fills up, and when the bucket fills, you get the ticket. So you actually get something from grinding out like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 win victory.
And if someone wants to like fucking
just getting dumped
optimize the fun out of their game and just get 1 win retreat, 1 win retreat, like go fuck, like sure, like go fucking ruin day 1 builds. I don't care. Like let them do. That's how I feel about it.
And it probably won't even be that simple. They'll do something else. But so yeah, the ranked system. I have a problem with the ranked system, but people have said that it's like I believe is this how ranked works in Hearthstone, or is it how Battlegrounds works in Hearthstone, where you have to pay basically real money to play it, and if you do well enough, then you can get enough of the coins to let you play it for quote unquote free.
That is the draft mode in Hearthstone.
Draft
so
mode.
Like
okay.
Think of that mode. So it's like that in most.
In this game, it costs 100 gems, which is equivalent to $1, to play 1 ranked run. And how you get chests in this game to get the gems back is on victory number 4, victory number 7, and victory number 10. You get 1 chest. However, the average amount of gems you get from a chest is like 46, I think is the number people have determined. So that means even if you get 2 of the 3 chests, you will be at a loss.
On average.
You will not be able to sustain ranked on average with 2 of the 3 chests. So in the end, you will have to end up spending money if you aren't good enough to get 10 wins every time. Now, they are nice in that they give you the 1 free ranked run a day, which does feel good. That's actually how I was able to progress through the game. I have not spent a single real-life dollar on this game because Taylor gave me his beta key.
I actually don't know if you can buy that currency without buying like founders packs. Like, can you just? Oh,
yeah, you
okay,
can.
Okay.
In the top right, there's a store button, $5 for 500 gems. So I ended up using the 1 free ticket a day to get enough gems to unlock the first character, who's 500 gems. Then the next character is 1,200 gems, and then presumably the next character will be, I think the full price is 2,500 gems, which is astronomical to me. $25 fucking dollars for 1 character is ridiculous.
I do think it's smart to, if you just added them all up and averaged them out, but then like mess with the scale slider so the first unlock is cheaper. I think was the smarter way to do it.
Yeah, it was like 80% first hero discount, and then it's a 40% second hero discount because there's only 3 characters right now, and they give you Vanessa to start with. So I unlocked Dooley for 500 gems, which took about 2 weeks of doing the 1 ranked run a day because I wasn't good enough to win multiple times, so I was only ever getting maybe 2 chests at best. So I'm looking at an average of, about 90 gems per day, maybe 80. Which isn't including the times where I just got dumpstered and lost on like victory number 2 or 3 because I just couldn't get a build going. So it took me 2 full weeks to unlock the first character. All of this is to say, obviously we're talking about the live service model and how I really don't like it because any game I've ever played in the history of my life, I've never had to pay real money to play one of their game modes. Especially one that's simply ranked. They don't have a leaderboard in this game. There's no meta progression. It's literally a closed beta that they're still charging you real life money to play their ranked mode. I was like, what fucking game does this? Even, Magic the Gathering Arena, you can play the ranked mode for free. Apex Legends, a game I play, you play the ranked mode for free. Like all these games, Valorant, you don't have to pay to play ranked. Like it's asinine to me that they would charge people.
I have the problem is they shouldn't call it ranked because the reason they're charging money is because the rewards are tied to this mode. And like when you play a normal ranked game of all of these things, like you don't normally get as many cosmetic rewards as you would in the proportionate amount of time in the Bazaar, right? The problem is that they are calling it. This mode has a ranking system is more just like how long have you been playing? What's your win rate over time? So they should call it.
Yeah,
just call it something else, and I think it would feel less bad. They don't have a ranked mode. That's how I feel. They don't have a ranked mode. They have a mode with prizes and a mode without prizes.
Yeah, they should call it, there's like the free play mode, and then they should call it like prize
Yeah.
mode or tournament mode. Oh, if they called it tournament
Yeah,
mode,
so
that would be
makes,
better. I know it's
and
not
like
a
that
tournament
even
per
makes
se,
sense. There's
but
usually an entry fee with tournaments, so like, yeah, I could get on board.
yeah,
with
exactly. But there's also, I have no idea how this is going to work because it's in closed beta and the market, quote unquote, isn't open yet. But if Ryan is listening to this, he's probably going to be fucking wincing. I think there's some kind of NFT shit in this game. Now, before I can hear Ryan Labaki's future self going ballistic.
To be clear, I hate NFTs more than any person I've ever met, too.
I know. But here's the thing. So when you play the game and you win these chests in their ranked mode, the chests give you gems back and some kind of cosmetic. The cosmetics are usually skins for all of the different cards, skins for your character, skins for the cards themselves, skins for the board, skins for whatever. You know, there's just cosmetic stuff because you're staring at this game all the time. It's fun to get cosmetics and have things look different. But when you open these cosmetics, they are like certified and they have a number on them. And they have said when the game goes free to play, there's going to be a trading market where you trade these cosmetics you have. Which is a lot like, you know, the card trading market on Steam, I think is what I'm likening it to. Yeah. So I don't understand why you would want to trade for this, what the numbers mean. Are people going to be hunting specific numbers? Like, why can I get the same skin twice and it have different numbers? What does that mean for me? It is the exact same skin. One of them is number 1,552. The other one is number 6,212. Like, what the fuck does that mean or matter? I don't get it. So I don't know how the trading market will work for this game. But part of their defense is that because they plan to have this robust trading market, they don't want botting. And charging real money to play the ranked mode that gives you the cosmetics is the way they're preventing botting. Which is what Hearthstone, I believe, has gone on record saying as well. The devs have said they are preventing botting by charging. So, you know, that whole realm feels a little weird to me. I don't really want to touch it. I don't really know how it works. All I know is I am now good enough that with my one free ranked ticket a day, I can usually get 7 victories, if not 10 most of the time. So I get full money back and then I just sit on it. I don't keep entering into the ranked arena and spending 100 gems every whatever. The other thing is, I win on the free play track. I get 10 wins almost every single time I play. So I have like 11 free ranked tickets sitting in my stash. But I'm just holding onto them for, I don't know, maybe the full release or something. I'm not sure what I'm doing with them, but I am now good enough at the game where I can win in the free play mode consistently and I can do really well in the ranked gameplay mode consistently. All of this is to say, my original point was the character they start you off with, Vanessa, is the most difficult character to win with. I'm sure that's not intentional, but the way these characters work is there's 3 characters. There's Vanessa, who's like a pirate lady, Dooley, who's a little robot guy, and then there's Pygmalion, who is a combination of a pig and an alien, but he just looks like a giant boar. He's like a big man boar thing. They all have distinct play styles, which we haven't gotten into. I don't know if we want to. We're an hour and a half into the podcast now. But Vanessa is a pirate lady, so she's very heavily focused on weapons and aquatic items, which a lot of the aquatic items provide haste or provide damage scaling or poison. She also has a system called ammo, where her guns, Taylor mentioned this earlier, not guns, sorry, her items have ammo, and that ammo is a finite resource. So like this gun or this cannon or whatever it is will be really strong, but it can only be used twice before it runs out of ammo, and then it'll just sit there not doing anything. So then there's other items to supplement it, where, you know, this thing will reload the item to the right every 2 seconds, or this item will reload adjacent items, but only when they, crit or something like that. So there's ways to mitigate this. But that requires a lot of knowledge, a lot of item picking skills, and a lot of predictive behavior and being able to understand the game. So immediately playing Vanessa, this is when I was really struggling and messaging Taylor a lot, like getting pissed off because I kept losing. I felt like it was impossible for me to build an ammo build because you literally need specific items, otherwise the build just doesn't work because of how ammo works. You need to be able to reload, and I couldn't figure out how to consistently get my items to reload. Or you get the item reloading stuff, but then you don't get the good ammo items that are good payoffs for the reload. So I found myself completely locked out of an entire playstyle because I couldn't figure it out. I still can't, by the way. I have not one single time gotten a good ammo build. Haven't done it yet.
Not picking double barrel shotgun.
Which I do, and then get baited because I can't kill people or I don't get the reload for it, and then I just lose because I picked this item that's really strong, but it runs out of ammo really quick. So I can't do ammo. Then I found her weapons to all be really lacking compared to the other two characters. Their weapons are way stronger, way faster. Where Vanessa's weapons are all about you want to amass as many as possible, and then they all scale off of each other. But what that means is you have 0 defense. So if somebody's build starts going off a little bit before yours, you just die like every single time. So I couldn't ever get a weapon build to work, which meant I was stuck with this one specific aquatic hasty poison build, which was really fun, but it also requires 5 or 6 specific items to really synergize well. So I effectively felt like the character that I'm forced to play was unplayable unless I did one specific build, and within that one specific build, you need to have really good RNG, so I thought, to make the build work well enough to get you to the end game to actually win. So it was just this cascading effect of me just feeling very suppressed by this character I was playing. It was really fun at first, but like I've said, the more you play, the more you kind of figure out the game, the harder it became with this character for me to win. Now, eventually, I won enough chests in the free play mode to get Dooley, and when I unlocked Dooley, that is when I started having tons of fun. I was able to win a lot more. I was able to figure out synergies better with him. His items just feel stronger on an individual basis. He feels like he has way more build options as well. Like, you can mix and match things way more easily than you can with Vanessa. Then, of course, like, a week after I unlocked Dooley, they released this patch where they're like, we realize Vanessa is kind of weak right now, so we're going to buff a bunch of her shit. So I like struggled for weeks on this character that was basically underpowered, and then they just buffed the shit out of her, and now she's pretty strong. So it was just bad timing. And it was learning curve, and yeah, it just made me not. And yet, all of that to say, I couldn't stop playing the game. It had its hooks in me. I couldn't stop fucking playing it. Even though I was losing and getting mad, I couldn't stop fucking playing. So something is to be said there about that, right? That it was still fun enough and addicting enough that I wanted to get better. I wanted to be winning. I just couldn't. And I still maintain Vanessa is the hardest character to play for sure. I win nonstop on Dooley and Pig, but I still barely get wins with Vanessa. Very hard.
That's very interesting. So here, I had some thoughts about Vanessa in terms of your... I think you're correct on how you described her builds, but what I think the reason they introduce you with her is that all of her builds are very siloed, so it's much more clear how to make a build work. Ammo and reload. That's siloed from poison and aquatic, which is siloed from weapons. So, like, it is a noob-friendly way, whereas, like, Dooley and Pygmalion feel like their builds are much more fluid, Venn diagram overlap. Things kind of lead into others. So when you can recognize how to be better at the game. So I think that is why, like, almost intentional, but makes it ironically harder to do well. But I do think it's funny is that Vanessa was so strong when the game starts, got nerfed by the time I bought it and gave you a key. You played when she was nerfed, and then when you finally got Dooley, that's when Vanessa got buffed a little bit again, and she's a much more playable, balanced area. So it's funny.
She is still. That was a great way to describe her. Siloed. She is still like that. That is my problem I have with her. She is still like that. Whereas the other characters have a lot more fluidity.
Yeah, so it can be easy to, as a player who wants some assistance of like, oh, I don't, like, you have to have some, like, it's funny, like, creativity. You have to think about what does this build want? That's the thing that I think is the difference between a good and a great player is, like, you go, what does this build want and what is my best chance of getting it? Where other people are like, I just want more of what is working right now. I just want more poison. So I think for Vanessa's sake, it kind of directs the player clearly. You want more of aquatic poison. You want more weapons, fast attacking. So like that medium items. So that kind of is my, if I'm trying to game design brain, that's how I envision the design of like why it feels different than the other two. And even Dooley has that kind of like the core is the one item that is the will lead you, but we'll just show you what direction and you explore that direction. Whereas Vanessa feels like a modern day like quest marker. I need to go to all vendors that sell aquatic items. So that's
right. Yep.
But that's why I think I like Vanessa in that, because I have a hard time being creative of like where do I want this to go? What will do well? What is this build looking for? That I really struggle with.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, which I guess I don't struggle with because Vanessa kind of shoehorning me into these really narrow play styles is what was so frustrating, because it's like, I know I need to be able to reload this fucking gun and I can't get something that reloads this. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? It's like, I can't find an ammo vendor. I'm trying to get random small items because the small items are usually what reload stuff, and like that's not working. And that's a nuance that I wanted to mention earlier that now I'm remembering was, you mentioned briefly that there's vendors that will specifically say like sells only medium items. And depending on your character or your build, that can be really, really powerful, or it can be an instant ignore. So for example, Pygmalion, he's called Pig for short, PYG, Pig. He has a specific build that uses an item called Crook, and Crook says all of your medium items do bonus damage based on the number of medium items you have. So his build with Crook is usually 5 medium items, because mediums take up 2 slots of your 10-slot board. So you just put 5 medium items, Crook adds like 80 damage to every single weapon you have, and it just skyrockets the damage of your build. So he's really easy to build in that way. It's like, oh, you see a small medium vendor? Great, now we have a chance to get medium items. You see a medium only vendor? Super high value, go there now. Small items only? Easy ignore. Go past that guy, pick a different event. Like, so there's nuance to the vendors just offering specific item sizes that can really influence the way you progress through the game. And that's what I was kind of saying with Vanessa, is that like when you're looking for a specific item that does a thing and it's a specific size, then suddenly those vendors become way more high value. There are even vendors for Vanessa that say sells ammo items. So every single item he has is purely based on ammo. It either is an item that spends ammo, that reloads ammo, that augments ammo, etc. So there's stuff you can do, of course, to help your build. But I have just found Vanessa to still be the hardest to do that with. And I think it's interesting that she's the first character you get because of her narrow focus of builds. It does make her clearer and easier to understand as a player. So that is really nice that you get led into that. But that's where I encounter the problem, is because I'm pretty competitive and I consider myself pretty good at games, especially kind of like intricate strategy type games like this. So I got good at this game fast and I wanted to be even better. And I felt like I couldn't explore that as easily as I could with someone like Dooley. As soon as I unlocked him, it just clicked in a completely different way. So she's a great character to start with, but it definitely feels like the game is harder to be good with her. And that's where I hit that wall of frustration. And again, maybe it's a skill issue. Again, like in the 3 weeks I've played this game, I have not one time gotten an ammo build to work, and I don't know how to do it. And I know how the game works enough to know how to do it, but I just can't get it to work. And it's very frustrating. So I just don't really play Vanessa anymore.
I don't know why I like her so much. It's probably I ignore her ammo build most of the time because if I do use ammo stuff, it's usually just early game, and I use it as like a burst build of like I don't even think about reloading. I might just see a grenade as like 50 damage really fast on a 300 health enemies a lot. So, you're right. We haven't talked about the other characters, and I don't know that we really want to get into. We probably should get close to wrapping up here.
Just to briefly,
I do want to say,
go ahead.
What I think is really impressive is truly how unique each of these characters play, because and it's not even just in the like one, the designs of them are so unique, and that the item types, like, you can kind of tell what item's a dually item versus a Vanessa item, pretty obviously before you read them. And they all have like a unique little quirk to them. Like, Dooley isn't just a robot. Like, he has a whole theme of friends where there's a whole subset of the robots that all have names that are puns for like human names, and they have like little googly eyes on them, and it's just like really cute. So it's like Dooley's a robot but he's a cute, friendly guy. So it's like very distinct. And like Pygmalion is like a dude who's obsessed with like economic growth and like money and like real estate, and it's just like a weird tycoon guy, but he's also a boar. And Vanessa is the only thing that's kind of normal, but like she's a pirate that's also like very has a much more aquatic themed focus, like having a much more in tune with like just the ocean and water in general. And I just think those are such like unique, cool angles of very normal tropes. Other thing I also wanted to, I really didn't appreciate until much later is how much the name of the game explains why the game is structured the way it is. It's like the 3 events are just like 3 stalls you see, right?
Yeah.
It explains why the vendors talk the way they do, and why and it's fun that each of the vendors sell like unique products, and it makes sense because like, oh, that's why. And it explains why these weird people are meeting up, like why these types of characters would be overlapping, and why like the fights aren't like to the death. It feels like almost like just like the 2 peacocks, like, you know, puffing out their chests to see who's the tougher, who's gone on the more adventures. That kind of level of fighting, like you're showing off your wares more than it is like I'm trying to kill the opponent. And like, I don't know, that explains why even the UI looks the way it does, of like it looks like a storefront, kind of like a bazaar shelf. And like, I don't know, there's a lot of really subtle things that tie in the name, the UI, and explains kind of like why you're doing the things you're doing without like it being in a 3D space where you are looking around with a character model. All you're seeing are just like clickable interface objects, you know? And I don't know, it's just surprisingly clever.
Yeah, that's really the word that sums up this game the most for me, is surprising. I am shocked at every aspect, and the more I play it, the more surprising it is. It is surprising how complete the game feels. Like you're saying, even from the art perspective, which I don't pay much attention to the art because the game is so fun, and the art didn't strike me as being that amazing. It's just kind of like stylized, modern looking. I don't know how to describe it. The way I describe it is like, but it's got that cartoony.
It's DreamWorks. It's like that kind of level. It's like a friendly kids animation, but not like the top S tier company made it, but like a pretty good A or B team did. So like I said, it's the DreamWorks to Pixar, and it kind of has that level of like.
Well, at this point, Pixar is worse than DreamWorks, for the record.
True, I guess that's fair.
Pixar really doesn't make good movies anymore. Ever since they got bought by Disney, they just make kind of garbage.
Just like WALL-E.
No, that's back when they were amazing. Yeah. So the art isn't that anything to write home about. However, it's the cohesion of everything that works really well, like Taylor's saying, and everything makes sense. And it just feels like such a complete game for being closed beta pay access kind of thing, like early access, if that's what you would call this. It kind of is, but not really. They're not like, hey, play our unfinished dogshit game and we'll fix it over time. It's like they know what they're doing. They know what kind of game they want. What's missing in this game is, you know, some of the art is like still black and white. It's not finished. But the gameplay, the animations, the art direction, the mechanics of the game, everything feels so complete. And it really feels like they're just polishing it up for the full release. And I do respect that too. They could easily just throw this on Steam, call it early access, and be done. And maybe I got in on the tail end of it. Maybe this game really was like much more unfinished.
Kyle, you got in. There's maybe one major patch, and you got in. The game came out, I think it was Halloween was the first day of the closed beta. And I gave you the code in December.
Oh, wow, okay. Damn, all right, yeah. So So yeah, the game is just, it's a real surprise how much it's hooked me. I've always shied. Oh, this is something we didn't talk about. We can talk about it briefly. Is other auto battlers. That term turned me off because I don't like auto battlers. I've played them before. There's the League of Legends one, which I forget the name.
Team Fight Tactics.
What the fuck is it called? Team Fight Tactics. Already forgot the name of it, even though I looked it up before this fucking podcast. Team Fight Tactics, the rest in peace Dota Overlords that got canceled, Dota Auto Chess, or whatever that kind of shit is. Like,
that's why it's called
an
auto battler, because that's what auto chess became an auto. Yeah.
Yeah. So what made me, and there have been auto battlers historically in custom games, like on Battle.net and Warcraft 3, there were auto battlers, and in StarCraft there were auto battlers. So I'm familiar with the game play style. What always turned me off about them is I just didn't like watching my little cluster of enemies fight each other. It felt like an RTS, but where the strategy is... It would be like an RTS where you have to build up your base and your economy and your buildings and your army, and then your army just goes and fights and you have no control over it. It felt really weird to me. Like, I worked for this army, let me make the army good, and that's why StarCraft or a real-time strategy game is fun, because you have both halves of this, right? Okay, so... But then in an auto battler, I can like sit here and watch my idiot guy attack the full health dude instead of just doing the one last damage to the guy to the left. But because it's an auto battler and I have no control, I just have to watch my moron tank like hit the other tank instead of tanking the DPS of the other enemies. And it's just like, I would describe those as arena auto battlers, where you throw a bunch of dudes in an arena and watch them all kind of automate and fight. And it can be frustrating to watch them do the wrong thing. It's not very satisfying to just kind of slowly watch them all whittle down. Something about it I really didn't like. So this game, Taylor describing to me as an auto battler, was immediately a turnoff. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm interested in that. However, it is not what I'm coining arena auto battler, which is what Teamfight Tactics is what Dota Overlords was, it's what, the custom games were. Those I would call arena auto battlers. This one is a heads up PvP item auto battler. And the distinction is significant for me, because this game is wildly addicting, and I know for a fact I would never play Teamfight Tactics. Like, I've watched videos on it and I've just been bored to death. Whereas this, I watched a little bit of YouTube gameplay and I'm like, oh wait, I get that. This is cool.
I'm glad I
but they're
gave
both
you
technically
a
auto
thing,
battlers.
because I didn't know how to get you to play it, but I was like, I know you would like this because I know you like the only part you didn't like in auto battlers and the arena ones are kind of like the dumb AI controlling your units. So take that part out, and it's like it's about building a super synergistic. It's like the ARPG meets fucking card game kind of parts of the brain that I'm like, these are so up your alley. I know you would like this if you could just get on board. So I'm glad that whatever videos you watch got you through there.
Honestly, I just went to their website and saw their little trailer thing, and I had no concept of what the game looked like, really. I didn't understand how it worked. And then when I saw the UI and I saw someone actually playing it and saw the items working together, that's when it clicked. I was like, okay, I get this. Now, something I want to also say before we wrap this up is this game, what also makes it so fun is the way I would describe it is in a deck builder, generally you start with kind of a shitty base deck. And over time, you build up this deck to include the cards that you want. But then eventually your deck becomes kind of bloated, so you have to like work on trimming it down. Then eventually, in a deck builder, traditionally, you can finally get that synergy where you like draw 5 cards and you play them and they all like fire off of each other in really fun ways, and it's really exciting. But then you get that feeling of like, well, those were the 5 best cards in the deck. Now I know my next 10 cards are going to be kind of shittier. And then you have to draw and deal with the shitty cards again and hope your shuffle is good so that the next draw is better, etc. Like, that feeling sucks. What this game does is it captures that feeling of having that perfect 5 card, 6 card, whatever card number you draw. If it's Dominion, it's 10, or I don't even know if that's true. Anyways, this game makes you build up into that perfect setup rather than making you like whittle down something into the perfect setup. If that makes sense.
That's a good way of explaining why it's so much easier to enjoy, because it's like, yeah, you're always putting out the best cards, and you can only make that better. Having a deck building game, you start from 0 and then hand select every card that goes in. I think, yeah, I didn't realize how much the idea of being able to trim out any item at any time completely revolutionizes this as a deck building type game. Kind of a big deal.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's why when I saw it and played it for the first time, I understood immediately why this was going to be so fun for me. It's that feeling of being able to actually choose what I'm playing versus hoping my draw is good and getting the right cards that feel good. It's like, this is, the RNG factor in this game is having to buy the items. It's the same as a deck builder, I guess, buying the cards. But in this game, it's like, if I buy a good item, I can put that into play immediately and start benefiting from it. Whereas a deck builder is like, you buy the really good card, it goes into your graveyard, then you have to get through the rest of your deck, then you have to shuffle that graveyard into a new deck, and then hope you draw the good card you just bought. And it's like, it takes away that obnoxious 3 steps and just lets you play with the good thing that you just bought. It lets you play with your toys. That's what it is. It's that simple. Yeah, this game lets you play with your toys. And deck builders, there's too many extra steps that make them not as fun as this.
Yeah, we can definitely summarize. We only didn't even talk about the other 2 characters too. We kind of only really talked about one. Each of them is unique. And they've planted seeds of other, like, what I think is even more clever is there are events that are like, sells items from other heroes, some of them being the other playable characters, and then, like, there are 3 other characters that are referenced by name in-game with a whole slew of, like, 30 unique items to them, but they're not playable. So, like, are they going to be, or are they just a vendor within a vendor? But they all have this, like, there's a guy who's, like, obsessed with cooking, and, like, all these different items have, like these unique synergies that only make sense with his slew of items. It's so interesting that it, like, I don't know what without looking up what their roadmap is, I have no idea what their plans are for how they'll expand it, but they've already planted enough seeds that I'm like, I'm excited to see. It's, I don't know how this will be in like 3 years. Maybe it'll be too bloated and a lot of the magic will get lost. But as of right now, in this moment in time, they've got something special cooked up.
Yes. Yeah. And I think as long as they keep the gameplay mechanics simple, like, don't add more keywords. If they start adding like lightning damage and then they add
grounded, you're aerial this combat.
Yeah, a grounded mechanic. Yeah, or a stunned and all these different things. That's what's going to probably ruin a game like this. And it might be inevitable, but I'm hoping with the system they have with the keywords and the item types, which is something we didn't touch on too much. Obviously, we referenced them, but yeah, each item can have up to like 3 types or more. And sometimes the types synergize. Like, this item will trigger more often once if another tech item is used. And so you have to look through your items and figure out, oh, this one's got the tech tag. So now I can synergize my tech items rather than synergizing maybe keywords. Like, instead of basing all of your shit off of fire or poison, you can base all of your stuff off of tech that all synergizes with other tech stuff. So there's different layers of synergy as well that increase the depth of the game, but still keep the actual, like, picking of items and stuff simple. It's just brilliant, really. Like, all the different factors and stuff that they've put in this game, all the different little intricacies just make it so good. And, yeah, our point is, like, as long as they keep that depth and simplicity, the game will go very far. This does feel like it has the legs to be the next big thing. Of course, it's not going to be, like, esports possible, because there's no 1v1 players actively making decisions against each other, which is really what will limit this game from being like an all-star kind of game like Hearthstone kind of blew up into for a while. But it definitely has the foundations of being something really, really great.
Yeah, it reminds me of the way that like games like Balatro blew up. That's what this reminds me of. Like,
yeah.
if enough people play it where they start recommending it by word of mouth. This does seem like a game that Slay the Spire in a lot of ways was that game, right? And like, what an ugly ass game.
A surprising blow up. The art style is pretty ugly, but I believe it was all done by one guy, basically. Like, the dude who did the art for that had never done art for anything, so he did a pretty bang job.
God, I'm so excited for Slay the Spire 2. I cannot tell you. Like, this was like when they announced Grim Fandango remastered, or when what's another game? What is being excited for a video game like? I don't remember, but
right, yeah, I can't really remember either. Well, Path of Exile 2 I was excited for. Fucking God, that game. Oh, Titan Quest 2 . That is my
I'm
next
too
one.
nervous to be excited, but I'm excited
it.
it's at least we're getting a sequel, because
I've seen gameplay. It looks good. It looks like a Titan Quest, man.
They're saying and looking like all the right things, but the full package always paints a much different. Remember Path of Exile 2? Did that look?
Yeah, true. It did look good.
It had everything. Once, the problem with the game isn't there was nothing to do at Endgame. So I guess they did solve that problem, but they found a new one.
Which, is actually incorrect. They kind of tricked everybody. You thought there was a lot to do at the endgame, but it is actually very simple, and it got extremely boring really quick. Anyways, Path of Exile 2 is a whole
The Bazaar, though, really great. And hell, if you want in, let me know and I can get refer a friend code, that if you buy it, I get in-game, I get some free ranked tickets, and I could really use them because I'm not doing so great. So,
well, it's your obsession with playing Vanessa. Play the good characters, and you'll actually
smash I don't want to be carried by a tier list.
Right. So yeah, the Bazaar, I highly, highly, highly recommend it for anyone who, I don't know, really anyone who just likes games. It's really good. If you like deck builders, if you like ARPG kind of stuff, if you like synergizing things, it appeals to me in a lot of different ways. As somebody who plays a good variety of different games, it hits a lot of marks. It's very
funny. It's like, if you like this types of games Kyle and Kyle's friends like, you would like this. It's like Magic the Gathering type. People, the reason they like Magic the Gathering, like that answer is that type of guy. Like, the reason you like Magic is the same reason you like the Bazaar. That's kind of the way I'd explain it. Like, 'cause some people like it for the fucking sick, beautiful story, which is not you. But you like the way that the like deck building kind of scratches some itches. It's great. It hasn't done anything to offend me yet, so love them for it.
Yeah. The ranked system has offended me indeed.
If they rename it and then just have a ranked mode that just keeps honest track of ranking that's unrelated, that'd be sick. But whatever.
That's what they need to do, because the game currently has 2 modes. The free play mode is like terrible and unrewarding, and the ranked mode, you technically have to pay for it. You get 1 free 1 a day, which is fine, but yeah, like having 2 modes and both of them basically suck is frustrating. But yet, here I am, not stopping playing the game. I've been dying to talk about it, so I'm really glad we did this one. It is so fucking fun that even those things aren't deterring me from it. And I know for a fact, like, Ryan would probably love this game. Actually, both Ryans, our brother and my friend Ryan, would both love this game. Carver would absolutely love this game. I just don't know if he has time to kind of like invest in it and play it. Although he played a lot of Marvel Snap, but that helped that it was on the phone. He'd have to play the Bazaar on the computer. That's the other thing, forgot to mention. It is not on mobile. It feels like a mobile game, the board layout and everything. Like, I can totally see playing this on my phone.
Yeah, this is one of those things, depending on how successful it is, you will see a mobile port one day. That's how I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, the Bazaar, closed beta. It is $30, but you do get 2 keys, like I said. So if you
go 50-50.
Wanted to split it with something like Carver and Ryan, could just pay $15 each, basically, and both get access if they wanted to do something like that. I'm sure, I don't want to leave anyone out. Ian, you would like this game too, but he's not really a gamer anymore. So regardless, highly recommended if you like, strategy, deck building, item kind of stuff. It's wildly good in so many ways. And I don't know what will make me stop playing this game. I thought the same thing about Marvel Snap, and that I ended up stopping playing because I just had that crystallizing moment of like, why am I doing this? I don't even enjoy this anymore. But that was because of like the daily chore stuff, and the way they released cards was pretty frustrating. This game so far doesn't have any of the things that like Marvel Snap did that made me stop
I
playing.
do think the lack of direct player kind of rubbing some salt in the wounds. Like, I never feel quite as bitter as I would if I was queued up into a ranked match and lost. You know, I never.
You mean
in this game compared to like a Marvel Snap or like a direct, like someone is on the other end of this kicking my ass. Like no.
Right, yeah. Like, no one knows. You don't know who
Yeah.
you've beat. You don't know which one of your ghosts have beat anyone. No one else knows either. So it's like we said earlier, it's sort of a cheat. Instead of trying to make AI be smart, they're like, what if we just let people build their stuff, make the decisions, and we just take snapshots of these people's builds, and that's who you play against. It's a pretty brilliant system. The asynchronous PvP. I've never played anything like it before. I don't know what other game has asynchronous PvP. As far as I'm aware, like Teamfight Tactics is live, right?
So
You're playing
there
against
are
somebody.
quite a lot of board. It's a very common amongst board games, right? Like, you take your turn, you confirm your turn, and then like so Civilization has asynchronous. But if you're talking about the way that this snapshots, like Super Auto Pets, which came out before this. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Raynad, the lead developer on this game, was very bitter about Super Auto Pets coming out because he claims that like they came up with this idea independently of them, and so it's one of those things like, all right, buddy, whatever. Doesn't really matter who came up with it because I don't think it's necessarily.
Well, it would suck if he's like being accused of ripping it
I don't
off or
think
something.
anyone necessarily is. Anyone who is just being an asshole. No one with any like sense of respectability would accuse any of them of ripping them off for sure.
Right. And I could also see being really excited that you feel like you have something fairly new in the gaming space, and then suddenly this other game comes out and was like on a parallel thought train as you, and they just
way
pulled the trigger faster, and you're like, fuck!
Sucks.
Yeah. So anyways, The Bazaar. Highly, highly recommend it. It will destroy your life. Luckily, I work from home, so I get to just like play The Bazaar in my off time, go jump to my other computer and do work shit, and then when I have another 10 minutes to spare, I swap back over to The Bazaar and play some more, because, again, it's asynchronous. There's no time limits, nothing. You can just play and stop playing literally whenever you want. It's amazing.
Love it. I can't add anything extra because I agree, 100%.
Yep.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
It's worth the price. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. All right. Talk to everyone later.